Hello, friends. You are watching News Factory. My name is Evgenia Kutnova, and my guest today is American political scientist and former chief of staff of the Azerbaijani government, Ramiz Yunus. Mr. Yunus, I am glad to welcome you to our broadcast. Hello.
Greetings to you. Thank you for the invitation. Likewise, I am also glad to welcome you and to see you in good health. Greetings to all our highly respected audience. Glory to Ukraine.
Mr. Yunus, I wanted to discuss another important topic with you. This concerns everything happening in the relationship between the Russian Federation and Azerbaijan. It is known that the Azerbaijani Ministry of Foreign Affairs has lodged a strong protest with the Russian ambassador regarding the mass detentions of citizens of that country and the deaths of 2 Azerbaijanis in Yekaterinburg. It is known that Russian law enforcement agencies conducted large-scale raids in apartments where Azerbaijani citizens were living, as a result of which 2 Azerbaijanis were brutally killed, several people were seriously injured, and 9 were arrested. On your Facebook page, you write that these events in Yekaterinburg and other cities clearly show that this country is sliding into chauvinism and open discrimination based on nationality. So is this a new round of escalation, or how would you describe it?
Well, here I would consider several directions. The first is Russian-Azerbaijani relations, which have definitely deteriorated sharply after Russia, with its air defense system, shot down an Azerbaijani civilian plane that was flying the Baku-Grozny route. And as he was approaching the city of Grozny, he was shot down by a Russian missile. That's it. After that, Russia's behavior, the shameful and criminal behavior of Russia at the highest level, starting from the president of Russia and all other officials, caused a wave of outrage in Azerbaijan. This reached the very highest level, and the president of Azerbaijan personally demanded several times from the president of Russia and the entire Russian leadership an official apology. The punishment of all those responsible for this vile crime, whose names Azerbaijan knows and whom they demanded be held accountable. That's it. And payment compensation to the families and relatives of the victims, none of this has been done to this day. For a month, Russia had the opportunity to do this voluntarily. Russia did not take this path. According to the existing protocol, this has been handed over to the international ICAO structure, that is, the international agency that deals with all such matters, and which includes both Russia and Azerbaijan. The investigation will now be conducted over the course of a year. Preliminary findings were already published after a month, and the final results will be released in a year. So that means it should be completed in December. If nothing at all happens by that particular time, Azerbaijan will certainly continue to press its case specifically at the very highest international level. But the very significant fact that Azerbaijan actually dared, for the very first time in the entire post-Soviet space, as a country that was once an integral part of the vast Russian Empire and the extensive Soviet Union, to boldly wag its finger and openly threaten Russia in this unprecedented manner. Of course, this did not sit well with all the imperialists at the highest level, those who have been running Russia ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and especially over the last 25 years since the security services came to power. We can see this. For example, take the recent speech by the president of Russia at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, where his quote about the Russian soldiers' boot, wherever it steps, that means it's ours, is yet another confirmation of this. And I am very glad and proud that today on the territory of my native Azerbaijan, that boot is no longer present. But do you think they like that? Of course, they don't like it, because Azerbaijan drew the right conclusions after the First Karabakh War, when Russia supported Armenia and this separatism with all the necessary means. They occupied both Karabakh and the 7 districts around Karabakh. But as you can see, the time of the Second Karabakh War came, and Russia behaved completely differently, because alongside Azerbaijan stood the second largest NATO army in the form of Turkey and nuclear-armed Pakistan. And Russia had to take this into account, despite the fact that throughout all 44 days of this war, Russia supplied Armenia with all the necessary weapons through the territory of Iran. And in general, Throughout all the years after the First Karabakh War, Armenia was supplied with all the necessary weapons worth $5 billion for free of charge. I emphasize for the continuation of this entire occupation. I'm not even mentioning the fact that there is a Russian air base in Erebuni, Armenia, that's nearby, just outside Yerevan, as well as the base in Gyumri. The Armenian border with Turkey and Iran is guarded by Russian border guards. The entire Armenian economy and all these shady dealings that have been going on for 3.5 years since the Russian aggression against Ukraine began, all these sanctions, evasion, first and foremost, gold and diamonds passes through Armenian territory. And according to official data, last year, Armenian budget amounted to $12.5 billion, 12.5, but unofficially it was 16, because about 3.5 went in cash. And for Armenia, that's an enormous amount of money. That is, Azerbaijan has only 4 billion at the official level, and we have both oil and gas, you understand, and Georgia has even less. And for this Armenia, these are, so to speak, huge opportunities, right? So, of course, all of this, these are the processes taking place in the South Caucasus. But the Second Karabakh War changed the status quo, and it changed the status quo. Turkey has already entered there. Azerbaijan now has the Shusha Declaration. This is 10 times stronger than any Article 5 within NATO, right? And you can see that today everyone takes this into account. But at the highest level between Russia and Azerbaijan, they maintained a certain decorum. That is, the president of Azerbaijan flew to Moscow, and even the president of Russia came to Azerbaijan on a state visit. But when this tragedy happened and it caused a wave of outrage over Russia's actions, after that, relations began to deteriorate more and more. And Russia probably thought that Azerbaijan was just like Armenia, Georgia, or Ukraine, a country they could talk to in the same way. In other words, they thought they can't defend themselves today, right? Well, Azerbaijan bared its teeth and did so firmly. It started with us shutting down the Russian house, and we began to close down various other projects connected to the Russian state. They didn't like that either. That's how it was. But despite this, at the same time, look, there's a 12-day war between Israel and Iran. Our border has been closed, just so you know, for the past 5 years. Yes, I always emphasize this. We have a political pandemic. And your two enemies, Russia and Ukraine, Russia and Iran, who attacked you, today we share a border with them, and our border with them is closed. For the past 5 years, it has been strictly closed. But despite this, when this war began, we opened the border in order to save a huge number of people, citizens of Central Asia, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and even several hundred Russians. Yes, led by a representative of the Ministry of Culture who happened to be there filming some movie, right? So Azerbaijan, despite the complicated relationship with Russia, after the tragedy with this plane, showed certain gestures that we are still, door is open, yes, to this. So please understand that sooner or later, you will have to do this, because anything you don't do and any delay in addressing this issue will negatively affect interstate relations. In other words, the topic of empire, the older brother, younger brother dynamic, it needs to become a thing of the past. It's simply no longer possible, right? So it's time to come to terms with that. But as we can see, they seem unwilling to do so. And here we have the statement by the president of Russia at this forum regarding the Russian boot. And immediately after that, look, the start of all these repressions against all non-Russian migrants. And they started with the Azerbaijani ethnic group, as you can see. And in Yekaterinburg, it wasn't 2 people killed, but 5 people, according to the latest reports. 5 people. Can you imagine that? Moreover, they threw in some story supposedly about an unsolved case from 25 years ago, some kind of murder. And suddenly, after 25 years, they decided to reopen it and come to people who are living at home with their children and wives. Do you understand? So they all live together. It's actually one big family, right? There were a huge number of relatives there, brothers, cousins, right in front of the family. Can you imagine? They kill them, torture them, and then say that he experienced stress, and during that stress, one died. And as for the second, it's still unknown. We don't know yet. And they don't release the bodies, right, to the relatives of the deceased. And there are videos showing how it all happened. There are living witnesses to how it all happened. That's why, naturally, Azerbaijan summoned the Russian chargé d'affaires in Azerbaijan. I want to emphasize, do you know what a chargé d'affaires is? It means the level of diplomatic relations between Azerbaijan and Russia is decreasing. Because when there are no ambassadors and chargé d'affaires are handling things, it means something is not right in the relationship between these two countries. Just a few hours before I went on air with you, the Ministry of Culture of Azerbaijan, which, as you understand, is part of the Azerbaijani government. And as you can imagine, such decisions are made at the highest level. The Ministry of Culture of Azerbaijan officially announced that all cultural events connected with the Russian state and with private individuals from Russia are being cancelled. No show business, no representatives of Russian show business, no cultural events, exhibitions, or anything else of that kind will be held in Azerbaijan in the near future. All of this is being suspended for an indefinite period, yes, until all these issues in the relationship between Azerbaijan and Russia are resolved. What does all this mean? What does this tell us? It means, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau so said, anger comes from helplessness, right? And this anger, which today drives and even bursts out, you could say, from all these representatives of the Russian political elite, and even some of them, like all these Tolstoys. Yes, there's one vice speaker, I think a former journalist. Just look at what he's come to and what he allows himself to say. An official figure, supposedly, can understand all those people who spew Nightingale droppings, yes, on Russian television channels. That's still somewhat understandable. That's their level. After all, they're not official figures. It's clear that they're pro-Kremlin propagandists. But when an official figure at the level of Deputy Speaker of the State Duma does this, and when you say such things, it's clear that you'll be blacklisted. You won't be allowed into Azerbaijan, just as they're probably already not allowed into many countries in the post-Soviet space. And I think Azerbaijan will tighten this even further. Azerbaijan is no longer the same country you can talk to. Like, yes, they do have a lever of influence in the form of ethnic Azerbaijanis, whom they are now harassing there. But that's like shooting yourself in the foot. It's shooting yourself in the foot because the Soviet Union fell apart along the borders of the Union republics. And it was precisely the national entities that were always the Achilles heel of both the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. And it's no coincidence that there was a certain national policy regarding all these national territories, which was maintained through repression. But today, Russia no longer has those capabilities. Russia today is not the Russian Empire, and Russia today is far from being the Soviet Union. And in the post-Soviet space, a new national consciousness is being formed, and my native Azerbaijan is leading the way. I emphasize truly leading the way, because we do not have a single Russian soldier on our soil. We have the Shusha Declaration with the second largest army in NATO. We have nuclear-armed Pakistan next to us, and all our borders are closed. We have this kind of unity among the 10 million people of Azerbaijan, this kind of consolidation. And all the enemies of Azerbaijan, as well as all of Azerbaijan's neighbors, will have to take this into account. And of course, our friends as well, this of course is a strength. We have the Organization of Turkic States, which is our family, where certain processes are also underway, and where Turkey, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan play the leading roles. And the fact that Azerbaijan is now showing such firmness in its relations with the Russian Empire, with those who have been carving up my native Azerbaijan for 200 years, is a good example for all the other neighbors of Russia. And these are serious questions that those in power sitting in the Kremlin should be asking themselves. If you want normal relations and if you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, don't forget that the majority of modern Russia's territory is inhabited by people who are not ethnic Russians. That includes Bashkortostan, Tatarstan, Mordovia, and Tuva, not to mention the North Caucasus. Or have you not learned enough from the two Chechen wars? So before you start putting pressure on Muslim Azerbaijan and hoping that the Soviet era isn't over yet, think 10 times about what you're doing and what actions you're taking towards Azerbaijan. That's why I paid attention to Maria Zakharova's cautious comments on this topic, because they understand that in the current situation when Russia is up to its ears, completely bogged down on the Ukrainian front, when Russia was disgracefully pushed out of Syria, when Russia is being squeezed out of the South Caucasus, when Russia was slapped down in the Iranian direction today to provoke Azerbaijan in this situation, when there isn't a single Russian soldier there and you have no control, what exactly are you counting on? To Iran? To Armenia? Well, we'll see. Try it. Look at what is happening today in Armenia. This is far from accidental. It was all just a coincidence. Look, right? Israel, Iran, war. All these things are happening in Russia. And look at what's happening in Armenia today, an attempted coup and a confrontation between the Armenian church and Pashinyan. And Pashinyan is already being called a Western puppet. They're comparing him to Zelensky. So of this is being done by the very same people who are now slinging mud at everyone who speaks out against Russia, including Azerbaijan. And Pashinyan is tightening the screws and arresting a Russian oligarch. Look at who has come to his defense. Look, Sobchak, Solovyov, then Kirkorov, and who else? Not a single one, missing all this Russian trash, the show business crowd. They've all gone on the attack, right? And this must mean something. And the fact that this tightening is happening there and that Iran has weakened in the current situation, Russia understands that. I've told you this regularly in my broadcasts, that Russia will eventually put up its last fight, and it will be on Armenian territory, because Armenia was the outpost in the South Caucasus. And Nikol Pashinyan, who recently flew to Turkey just last week, he made a statement there in Turkey saying, I am no longer the prime minister of the outpost in the South Caucasus. He didn't mention the word Russia. That's the only thing he didn't say. And everyone noticed it. He deliberately left out that word. He didn't add it. Yes, whose outpost? He was there. But he goes on to say, I am not the prime minister of the Armenian diaspora, because the Armenian diaspora in America, the diaspora in Russia, they have different political views. The diaspora in Iran, the Armenian diaspora in Israel, they have different political views. I want to be the prime minister of the real Armenia, not a hypothetical one. And that's why I came to Turkey today. I came to pay homage to the Turkish Sultan. Save me from Russia, protect me, because neither America nor the West, this is me reading between the lines. Yes, I'm explaining it to you between the lines. Neither America, represented by Donald Trump, is going to protect me, because we can see their policy. No Europe, which can't do anything at all without America. Today, Russia is putting pressure on me. The only one who can protect me in this situation today is you, Turkish Sultan. Protect me, because we were always under your protection in the Ottoman Empire. I will not repeat the mistakes made 100 years ago. I will do everything you need for this. Just protect me. And the Turkish Sultan, of course, will say everything Moscow needs to hear. Remember, he spoke beautifully about Moscow and came to the South Caucasus. He spoke beautifully regarding Moscow. He pushed Russia out of Syria, as you can see. And now he will speak just as eloquently about Russian-Ukrainian issues, about negotiations, and about Russia's role in these matters on the Black Sea coast, in the Black Sea region. There will be nothing to gain, because Turkey does not need partners in this job. So with whom is he going to share all this territory? That's why you see the Russian Black Sea fleet in its current state. Look at the circles they're making, because the Bosphorus is closed. And speaking eloquent while communicating with the Russian leadership and paying them compliments, look at what's left in the end. And in the end, it's the strengthening of Turkey's position and the weakening of Russia's position. And that's why Nikol Pashinyan understands this perfectly well. That's why he flew to Istanbul, realizing that Istanbul can really protect him today. I think it was clearly explained to him in Istanbul that improving relations between Turkey and Armenia is simply impossible without a peace treaty being signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And in order for this treaty to be signed, you need to bring your legislation and constitution into order. I think, in principle, Armenia is moving in that direction. In the near future, I think we'll hear some talk that the OSCE Minsk group will become a thing of the past. In December, there is supposed to be an annual meeting is supposed to take place. I think most likely that's what they'll end up doing. And sooner or later, Armenia will surely change its constitution, because if Nikol Pashinyan went to Turkey for the first time and was received like that and made such statements, it means he's weighing everything carefully. And all of this isn't happening by chance. And he understands that the weakening of Iran, the strengthening of Turkey, the US and Israel, all of them are allies of Azerbaijan. All those people and countries will stand up for Azerbaijan, but who will stand up for you? No one will stand up for you. they want to remove you from power. And first and foremost, it will be Russia doing this. And Russia has set this process in motion. That's why it started taking these preventive measures to cut off the heads of these Karapetians and everyone else who's a fifth column within Armenia. Naturally, all of this is based on the Armenian church. And that's why, as you can see, Russia has moved forward. And I'm not surprised that in the near future, there will be some attacks on the Armenian diaspora in Russia, who may in one way or another support Pashinyan's government, right? Because only people like Karapetyan should be there, those who will carry out the Kremlin's agenda. Well, why am I telling you all this? These are all processes that concern not only Azerbaijan and Russian relations, but the entire post-Soviet space. And everyone should have paid close attention to Putin's statement about the Russian book. I have no doubt that people across the entire post-Soviet space are watching closely, understanding that a wounded beast, one that has suffered a serious injury on the Russian-Ukrainian front, will hold on and fight to the end. And he can lash out, he can bite, he can create a lot of problems. We can see this happening. Wounded beast, and in principle, we call it a bear, and they themselves have always called it that. That's why you always need to be fully prepared in this regard, right? And I think my native Azerbaijan has long drawn conclusions from recent history, and I'm very glad that today Azerbaijan is demonstrating exactly that. I think that today, here in the United States, in Europe, and generally throughout the post-Soviet space, everyone understands the processes that are taking place and what is being presented to us today as if these are supposedly some kind of criminal groups. So why didn't you deal with this for 25 years, right? So did this just happen today? So when you need to start some kind of process against Azerbaijan or against other countries in the post-Soviet space, you immediately remember those levers of influence that you can use. But I am very glad that Russia has fewer and fewer levers of influence over Azerbaijan. For this, it is very important to have the right allies, to have a good, strong army, and not just your own, but also allies who are ready to stand up for you. And a good economic safety cushion. Azerbaijan also has a rather powerful one. That's why Russia and everyone who supports Russia's policy in the South Caucasus today will have to take this into account.
Mr. Yunus, we are following the events and analyzing them together in our joint broadcast. Thank you for a substantive, interesting, and important conversation. And thank you very much for always paying attention to our viewers. This is important and valuable to us.
Thank you. Goodbye. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.